American heat. Denver, Colorado firefighters battle a major tank farm blaze at Stapleton Airport. Magnesium explodes in the city of Industry, California. On second alarm,
I'm producer Jeff Mattoon over Thousand Oaks, California, where a Santa Ana wind-driven fire burned down this multifamily dwelling complex. I'll have this coming up right now on American Heat.
Dr. Bill Kramer will have this month's college questions. And American Heaters. Lessons learned by the people involved are coming up right now on American Heat.
Holiday travel keeps airport fire departments on alert to the added possibility of emergencies on busy runways. Hello and welcome to American Heat. I'm Don Marsh.
And I'm Ron Barber. On Sunday, November 25th, 1990, as thousands of holiday travelers made their way home, huge tank farms caught fire at Denver's Stapleton International Airport.
You lost the concept of time when you were there. It seemed like it was dark in no time, and we got there at about 9:25 in the morning, and just so much going on, you forget what time it is. You know, time is irrelevant really when you've got that much happening.
Well, this one was entirely a different situation. It didn't go out right away, so it became very frustrating, and it became a real chore just to control your own emotion about why won't it go out and why can't we do what we want to do.
I knew that we had something really good going, and had to keep reminding myself as we were coming in there, you know, to not get ahead of myself and think it through.
No one on the Denver Fire Department had ever seen or fought a fire like this. They knew about this tank farm at the Stapleton International Airport, and many had imagined what a fire at that tank farm would do. But none of the firefighters envisioned this.
This was a lot worse than I thought it would ever be, and this is one of those fires that they say can never happen.
I knew when they said it that actually it was the tank farm, because that is the only thing behind Continental's hangar that could produce a major fire. So I called the fire department dispatcher and reported the fact that we had a major fire that had been reported to us by the FAA tower, and it would be in the tank farm, and I requested a second alarm assignment.
The initial call came from the airport tower at 0922 and sent Denver Airport rescue and firefighting units racing to the tank farm. The first rigs from the airport arrived simultaneously with a Denver pumper and found the piping and pump area raging with fire and impinging directly on 2 of the farm's 12 tanks. The tanks had been topped off with jet fuel the night before in anticipation of the Thanksgiving travel weekend. Firefighters knew they would have to make a quick and concentrated attack if they were going to stop this blaze early.
I was on Red 2, which is a 1,500-gallon water foam vehicle. When we arrived there and took a position through the gate, pulled into the gate area, immediately we started application of our foam agent. That'll pump 750 gallons of solution, and we were using 3% agent, AFFF. And the first application of foam, I started from the west side and covered the piping area and the fuel spill that we had in front of the piping area. A certain portion of it we did knock down. I was very successful in knocking down the standing fire, the fire that was there.
But this wasn't just a standing fuel fire. Broken valves spewed the Jet A fuel and fire into the air, making the initial concentrated foam attacks futile.
We had fuel spraying under pressure. The fuel was ignited. We were able to knock down the running fire and standing fires, but the fuel that was under pressure, it couldn't be extinguished by just hitting it with the turrets on the crash rigs.
Well, we had fire or fuel spurting 30 feet in the air under pressure. You could knock the fire down, the fire burning in the air coming back down, you had your reignition source. It was numerous leaks, not just a single leak, and it was all high pressure. To be able to get into the close proximity to knock everything down was almost impossible.
Firefighters began to realize that this fire was going to fight them. They called for everyone and everything they could get. The airport crash rigs that had been the first responding vehicles and the logical choice for foam application were making little headway.
These rigs are primarily designed for a quick attack. Now, in an aircraft crash, all you're really concerned with is getting a path initially for the evacuating passengers. Now that's critical because you've only got, in an aircraft crash, you've only got about 3 minutes that the fuselage will withstand fire, and then it'll fail. So the idea of these rigs is to get in, hit it quick, leave a path for evacuating passengers, and then you can go to work and trying to extinguish the actual aircraft fire.
They carry all of their extinguishing agent with them. They're not designed to lay a line for additional water supply. They carry the water supply with them along with the foam agent, the halon fire extinguishing agent, the dry chemical fire extinguisher agent with them, as compared to, you know, a regular piece of equipment where you have a water supply and you go from there. You can set up and go for hours. These things, what we had to do was to set up a regular rotation so that we had certain numbers of our airport equipment actually fighting the fire while other numbers were being filled back up with water and agents so that they would be next in line and go back into service.
You see that much fire, and you know what goes through your mind is, what exactly can I do to make a difference on something like this? And it hit me immediately after watching Red 2 dump their load of foam on the fire that even though they made a moderate knockdown, it wasn't going to do much. So what I thought we needed to do was get water on that tank 3 to cool the tank and the fuel that were in that.
But getting that water would be difficult. The hydrants at the farm were too close to the intense heat, and the overall layout of the farm presented access problems.
So we were limited in how they could get into it from the front, and they were limited in how they could get into it from the back. So they couldn't have taken the hand lines off of the ARFF rigs, the dry chemical lines anyhow, to get them in there. It was just it was really difficult to get in. It's a 16-acre fuel farm, and it's 1/3 of a mile around the outside of the tanks. The limited access roads was a real hindrance to us also.
But probably the biggest concern was getting foam, and a lot of it.
We put in a call for anybody and everybody to come and help. I think right after we got there, when I asked for the 5-inch rigs, they told me we had a 3rd alarm assignment. And we had a lot of mutual aid people come in from Conoco, some of the other experts that came in. And then our biggest problem was the foam. We just didn't have a big enough supply on hand here to be able to handle it. And then when we ran out of the foam that we had here, we had to put in calls across the country, and it took time to get them in here.
The big problem was the different types of foam that we had to use. This equipment is designed specifically for AFFF 3% concentration. And we used everything from 6% concentrate, alcohol-compatible foam, 3%, 6%, 6%, whatever we could get from every department, from every airport that would send us. That's what we were, because we really had a problem staying up with our usage on the thing.
The 2 tanks directly behind the piping and pump area, tank 3 and 4, took too much heat and became engulfed in the flames that had threatened them all morning. As this fire took on a new face, calls continued to go out for foam.
The operations supervisor that was spearheading this from his telephone communication
was calling all over the Front Range, what we call the Front Range, Colorado, border to border from Wyoming to New Mexico. We have Colorado Springs, Pueblo, clear up to Cheyenne, and we were looking for additional agent to be supplied to us because we knew we were going to be out. Once we exhausted the Front Range, Colorado, that was in close proximity to Denver, then we started outside of the state. We had shipments come in from Seattle, had shipments come in from Philadelphia, had from Dallas, and there was one shipment, a large shipment was trucked in from, I believe it was somewhere in Georgia. The first 3 loads we asked to be shipped in by aircraft, and then additional agent they put on trucks and flatbeds and started running that into us.
The strategy was simple: contain the fire to the immediate area, cool the exposure tanks, and lay a solid foam blanket on the holding ponds. While everyone agreed on the strategy, ideas for methods of containment and eventual extinguishment varied.
I had somebody from Mississippi who insisted that I use, I think his was liquid nitrogen, and let it evaporate, and he insisted that I know that nitrogen is inert, which I knew, and he threatened me that if we didn't use this process, he was going to let the national news know, and that we would really be in big trouble then. We had that one. We had a local expert, so-called, who said we should just drop dirt on it from a helicopter. Another one that said we should drop large chunks of dry ice into the pits, and they would then melt and create CO2 gas, and they would snuff out the fire. So we had a lot of help.
Chief Gonzalez got an equal amount of viable suggestions and help from engineers and experts both locally and nationally. Gonzalez did not take command of the fire, but did act as a consultant and made environmental decisions.
We had concern about the environmental impact on Sand Creek, which was just northeast of the complex. So we had the ability to drain off some of the water into that creek. Well, with everybody so tense about environmental litigation, that was a decision that would have to be left up to me, whether to open this valve or close the valve, or whether we would have product going there. I didn't want anybody else to be put in that position, so that would be one of my decisions. Basically, that's the level at which I was working, informing the mayor, powers to be, talking to consultants, experts in the field, being debriefed by the operations incident commander, and then making suggestions. And quite frankly, being somewhat of a cheerleader. I think it serves the department well, and the members within the department, that they see the chief out there and just encouraging them, and you know, and letting them know what's going on. So that was kind of my job. I'd go out and around the scene and talk to people and see how everybody was doing, and making sure everybody had what they needed, and coordinating with some of the outside agencies.
As night fell on Sunday, firefighters seemed to be holding their own on the exposure tanks. But at about 10:30 Sunday night, they had a setback.
I thought we lost it Sunday night. When there's some differing opinions as to what really was the cause behind that, but it looks as though maybe the 16-inch piping coming out of tank 4 let go completely, and we had 16 inches of fuel flowing into the southern dike and the central dike all at one time. We had all that fuel burning practically at once.
Letting this fire burn itself out became a questionable strategy.
The burn strategy was working to the point that the tanks did exactly what they were designed to do. They slowly came in upon themselves, so we had that pretty well controlled. The only problem that we really had was, like say, the underground pipeline feeding it back that we weren't aware of. Looking back in it now, you can say, should have paid a little more attention to the valves, tried to cool them down a lot more, and alleviated some of our problems. But at the time, we thought that all the valves were shut off.
They weren't, and the 440,000 gallons of fuel fed these fireballs. To compound the problem, the temperature in Denver dipped and the weather got nasty, causing operational headaches.
we felt that we had it pretty much contained, and then we had that cold front come through, and it blew the foam blankets off of the holding ponds, and we had another large volume of fire. So there were a couple of times there when I thought the possibility we might lose more than just the 2 tanks that we ended up losing.
Firefighters also had to be monitored for fatigue. Many had been working on scene all day.
Mostly the rehab portion of it, thanks to the Salvation Army, they had their truck there, and whoever the exposure chiefs were would alert the different crews as far as, well, why don't you take a break and go get some Gatorade and something to eat. And they were, you know, real aware of people and their fatigue.
Fresh crews arrived, and those who had watched this fire tease them throughout Sunday went home to rest, knowing it was still burning.
Well, the feeling, or the term bummed out, is fairly accurate, and I don't think anybody that left there went away with a great feeling. All that you could do was look back at everything that you did do and realize the enormity of the effort, and still, you know, what can you do to make a difference? It was frustrating.
Monday's tactics remained the same as command evaluated and re-evaluated their options. Tanks 3 and 4 had collapsed, and the fire was still burning madly in that area, with direct impingement now on tank number 5. Tank number 10 in the rear was also threatened, but firefighters were managing to keep all other tanks cool. Then, late Monday night and early Tuesday morning, tank number 5 started signaling that it would not survive another full day of fire.
Basically what began to occur, the fuel temperature in tank 5 was such that it was producing a considerable amount of vapors, and they were building up in the area between the floating lid and the lid for the tank, the top of the tank. And when there was plenty of flame impingement at this time on the tank. We were trying to keep it down, but on occasion it was getting direct flame impingement. And when the vapor-air mixture between the 2 lids was right and it got a source of ignition, it blew, and this tank would come up, the top of the tank would come loose a little more at each one of these explosions. And one of the guys who was on exposure 4 was kind of timing these things, and they were occurring within a couple of minutes. They were occurring about every 30 minutes.
Firefighters had called Williams, Boots, and Coots to Denver on Monday afternoon to hear their suggestions. Everyone agreed to wait and see what Tuesday morning brought. With specialized training equipment and a host of firefighters, a coordinated attack using foam and dry chemical began smothering the stubborn fire. By Tuesday afternoon, firefighters were shaking hands and rolling up hose, thankful that it was finally over.
I think had we had the resources that Williams, Boots, and Coots brought in, and of course the experience and knowledge, we could have put this fire out as easy as they did put it out. But we simply did not have the resources available to us. If someone is contemplating a fire in this sort of a facility, they better get their resources together and have them there, you know, ahead of the fire so that they can put it out initially.
It's easy to say don't be overwhelmed by what you come upon, but you have a real tendency to do that. You get caught up in the enormous size of the fire, all of the activity going on, trying to coordinate everything else that goes through there. You function, you get everything done, and it's always easy to go back and second guess yourself and say, well, I should have done this. But at the time, you make the decisions the best that you can and do what you can and what you think is right there. It just, I had to keep pinching myself and say, slow down and make sure you do what you're supposed to do and don't go off and do something half-cocked.
Keeping an inventory of working agreements of what you're going to do, what you're going to look for. It's very nice to feel that we'd never have a large major disaster and work under those conditions, but all of a sudden you can have something that just taxes your capabilities to the extreme, and that's what happened with Denver Stapleton.
A new airport serving Denver is slated for completion in 1994. Meantime, the Denver Fire Department is involved in the planning and creating of codes for new tank farms with better gasket material and holding ponds more properly situated.
Magnesium fires can be explosive and dangerous. Recently, in the city of Industry, California, a major fire broke out when magnesium chips ignited in a warehouse.
Fire paramedic.
Yeah, we need the fire department over here.
Okay, what's the address?
15429 East Proctor Avenue, City of Industry. It's a magnesium fire.
Magnesium fire?
Magnesium fire, yeah.
Okay, what's the name of the building you're in?
Mark Metals, M-A-R-K, Metals.
2:44 p.m., December 4th, 1990. A fire breaks out at the Mark Metals warehouse in the City of Industry, sending spectacular flames in the air that can be seen 30 miles away. Los Angeles area motorists easily spot the blaze from the freeways. These pictures are shot by an amateur videographer just after the fire starts. Before the day is through, more than 120 firefighters will be on scene fighting this blaze for more than 6 hours. Los Angeles County firefighters from Station 43 are only minutes away. When they arrive at the incident, the fire is roaring through the roof and is quickly spreading. 10 minutes into the fire, the blaze is elevated to 2 alarms. At 3:10, a 3rd alarm is called. Nearby structures are in danger. The firefighters know that tons of potentially explosive magnesium chips for use in the manufacture of aircraft engines and other products are stored in the warehouse that's involved. Captain Arnold Carter and his firefighters adopt an aggressive defensive mode.
At the time, I originally took a defensive position. I just wanted to cover the exposures, keep everybody out of the building, and go from there, and that's exactly the way we attacked it. We directed one of the first-in ladder trucks to come to our position in front, and we put the first 2 engine companies in the rear. And the engine companies in the rear used their deck guns for exposure protection, and in the front we used the deck gun on engine 43 and the ladder pipe off of truck 118 for the same purpose. Well, all of the personnel were directed to have full protective clothing, breathing apparatus, and we didn't want anybody inside the building, and they were all directed further to not put any water inside the building. We wanted it on the outside in the exposures.
Ironically, at the start of the fire, Battalion Chief David Stone happens to be en route to Station 43 for a meeting and reports to radio dispatch from his freeway vantage point he sees a large plume. Chief Stone heads for the area and a short while later becomes the incident commander.
The initial attack to the building was to protect exposures on the east side of the building, which we had a large warehouse on the east side, and also to protect exposure on the west side, which we had another a commercial building on that side. We also had a truck and trailer full of magnesium products that was being shipped out. We had an exposure on the north side of the building also.
For the firefighters, this incident is going to be like a battlefield. The blaze is so intense and the igniting chips of magnesium are going off like exploding shells or bullets. It's a dangerous situation for those who are trying to contain this blaze.
When we got there, it was about as intense as any structure fire I've been on. Later, when we applied the water to accelerate the fire, it became much more intense than anything I've ever seen.
Sand or dry cement is often used to snuff out a magnesium fire. But Los Angeles County firefighters decide early on that's not the strategy they will use.
A lot of people say that you should put sand on it. And whatever you put on a magnesium fire, it has to be totally dry, because if anything has any part to do with water, then it will cause violent reactions like it did. But as far as using water, we use it to accelerate it, which we did a very good job of doing. But to fight that, you really do need dry sand or dry chemical.
The firefighters are going to accelerate and drown out the fire. They pour up to 5,000 gallons of water a minute on this blaze.
Well, as we applied the water to accelerate it, the fire continued to manufacture little explosions inside of it. It sounded kind of like being in a war zone, with the visual display up over the building and the sound and the concussion effects that you could feel going past you.
The explosions, they're spectacular, they sound awesome, but don't look up. You know, everybody likes to look up the sparks and ooh and ah, but that stuff's coming down right on top of you, so be thinking at all times.
Actually, the training that we have received in our department has been quite valuable in this respect, but I think of equal importance has been experience, what I've seen in the past. But the reading that you do in this department and the training we've had has all said the same thing. When you get a fire of this volume, the only thing you can do is to apply water in large volumes.
One of the pieces of equipment used to get the job done is a deluge.
We wanted to put a lot of water on the fire at a high velocity to try to kind of bore the fire out, or hydraulic the fire out at one point. We lined it up at the back of the building here, and we had 2 engines pumping to it to get 2,500 gallons per minute. And we were able to reach way into the fire, into the seed, and actually bore into it really good, effectively.
Firefighters say if the company had reported the alarm immediately, it would have remained a small incident, instead of escalating into a major disaster. The Mark Meadows Company prides itself for fire prevention training and had promised only to call the fire department as a last resort. Investigators have learned that metal fragments falling on an exposed electrical cord ignited magnesium chips. A bucket of dry cement was thrown on the burning metal fragments, scattering them and the fire. Instead of a small amount, the estimate of the fire damage will be almost $1.5 million.
These people did provide a business plan to us with their contingency plan, which included the training of their employees for how they would handle magnesium fire. During our fire investigation, however, we found that apparently their plan had fallen a little short. They did have an employee who was not trained, and as a matter of fact was the person responsible for the start of this magnesium